Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Just click away that little message coming up there. So we're going to talk about agility in HR. We're going to talk about people agility and business agility and psychological safety. And I thought I'd send you out into breakout rooms in the end so that you will play the psychological safety game together for just a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes or something, so that you have a little bit different than only hearing me speaking. But I will share my screen with you and talk a little bit first, and I hope you get inspired to do the game. So doing that. Okay, so increasing people and business agility using psychological safety, that's the name of the talk I will do today. And I'm Pia-Maria Thorén. I'm the founder of Agile People. And what is Agile People? Well, Agile People is a community with people who believe in a better way when it comes to how we run organizations in a complex world. We are all passionate about combining agile and people to create conditions for a workplace where people feel happy and have what they need to perform in an optimal manner. We used to say, care for the people, but manage the system. We have taken the values and the principles from the Agile Manifesto. We started from there. We mixed it with the modern Agile framework and spiced it up with our own Agile People Manifesto that you find on agilepeoplemanifesto.org. And from there, we created 35 principles that we believe that all organizations, regardless of size or industry, need to increase. I will start with Douglas McGregor because I think he's a hero when it comes to describing the human side of enterprise and the importance of how we view other people. That becomes the first and most important learning here. So he wrote the book in 1959, and in this book he talks about how we view other people. We can view other people as if they are X or Y. X view means that we view people as lazy, they don't want to take responsibility, they are unmotivated, and you need to bribe them with carrots and sticks. Otherwise, they wouldn't perform at all. The Y view instead then takes the view that people want to be the best they can be in an organization. They want to take responsibility and they work from intrinsic motivation and they want to create value for other people. And they will also do so if they get the right conditions to do so. So the thing is that most people see themselves as Y people. It's only other people who are X, right? So then you can ask yourself if it's just a prejudice that we have about other people. And if they would get the right conditions, they would probably also be Y, because it's really about the system of work that we are providing to our employees if they show up as X or as Y. Do we believe in them? Do we set them up for success by providing a system where they can release their full human potential? Or do we set them up to fail by not giving them the opportunity to do what they do best every day, not removing impediments for performing and not giving them resources they need to succeed? If we make sure that every person can show up every day and be their best selves at work, do we then believe that they will perform better and be happier? That's the question. So X and Y is, of course, not certain people. X and Y is in all people, and it depends on how we create a system that would bring out the best in people or not. This is important because how we view people affects how we structure our management processes. It all starts here, and what kind of structures we believe that we need to build to set them up for success. And here's an example of the X view of people played out in history. And here we are in the ironing department. And today, these women have been replaced with robots. Here it was about doing the same thing over and over again, and the challenge was to make the flows here as effective as possible, to standardize processes. But the problem was that the women on this picture had no say in how things should be done. It was all carefully thought out by a few, probably men in the top, probably engineers, and they were just doing what they were told, more or less like brainless robots. If we instead move to the future work, this is the transition that we see will happen. And this has already started and has been speeded up by the pandemic the last 1.5 years. Artificial intelligence and robotics will actually ultimately create more work for us, not less. And there won't be a shortage of work in the future, but there will be a shortage of the right skills and the talent to fill those jobs that will be available. The majority of the workforce will freelance, so the employee form will be less common. And also, of course, remote work becomes the norm. And this we already saw happening. In this complex reality, we have to move from viewing the organization as a machine that could be controlled and managed to viewing it as a social system, because people are not cogs in a machinery. They have feelings, dreams, challenges, thoughts, and they cannot be controlled. People are not robots. They are complex adaptive systems that work from intrinsic motivation. And that means that we need to see people as resources and view them as the living organisms as they are, who we need to treat differently to work optimally. We cannot anymore standardize or box people with labels or grades. We just need skills to understand better what makes each person tick, why they do what they do, and care for them. And to create a well-functioning social system is a very complex task, and we need to use a lot more experimentation and trial and error for it to work. There are no recipes for success here, and Agile is definitely not the silver bullet. What do you need to do to make a person function optimally? Well, you need to care about basic psychological needs, and these are different for all people. The problems then with traditional organizations is that we believe that we have believed that we can control reality and make a perfect plan, but reality looks different. So here is the problem, that the world is not predictable anymore, and we need regular feedback from reality to make the right decisions along the way. So instead of making this perfect plan that we already know before it starts will not happen, you could say that you accept reality as it is and you adapt to it instead. So another problem is that we're focusing too much on the shareholder value when we should focus first on the customer value and the employee satisfaction, because happy employees serve customers, and happy customers will lay the foundation for a profitable organization that can deliver value to the shareholders. But this is then a consequence of the value creation happening between employees and customers. So you're not in business to make money. You are actually in business to create value for a customer, internal or external. Like Frederick Laloux so beautifully puts it in his book, Reinventing Organizations, profit is like the air we breathe. We need air to live, but we don't live to breathe. So we need profit to survive as a company, but that's not the reason why we run the company. The reason is to create value for some customer. And for HR, the customers are managers and employees. Another problem is that our organizational system is not making it easy for us to perform. Instead, the system is limiting us, putting obstacles in the way for great performance and letting people be themselves and perform from their respective abilities. Think about it. A good system can make a mediocre person fantastic, and a bad system can make a high performer perform really bad. So fix the system. A little bit about control as well. We're going to kill the annual budget also. The definition here is the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events, which means in business terms, controlling people and controlling the future. And this is the grand illusion that many managers have, that people can and must be managed and that the future is predictable and manageable. We all know that this is not true. Another problem is employee engagement. The vast majority of our workplaces today are not great places to work in. Very far from it. So from 69 to 94% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged at work. Gallup is doing this survey regularly, State of the Global Workplace. I'm sure some of you have seen it. Another problem, managers are feeling a lack of psychological safety in agile transformation programs. What happens to me and my role, they may ask themselves when we go through this agile thing. What will become of me when everybody seems to be able to lead themselves and don't need to be managed anymore? And this problem needs to be taken very seriously and can potentially ruin the whole change initiative. The skills that took managers to the position they're in today are often not the skills that are needed to lead in a complex world. So for an agile organization, it's more about removing impediments for people to be able to perform than managing and making decisions. Although sometimes the organization needs someone to make tough decisions when the teams cannot do it themselves. How do managers go from this traditional high power and status to servant and transformational leadership? We need to make it possible for leaders to change in the system as well by changing the environment. And we need to inspire leaders to find that intrinsic motivation to do it and to help them attain an agile mindset. But these are two conflicting goals, as it's only the leaders who can change the organizational structures that will make it possible for increased business agility to happen. And to do that, they need the mindset. But they can only get the mindset by having the right structures and environment in the first place. So this is a catch-22 dilemma. And that's why leaders cannot change. So where do we go from here? What will be leaders' role when everyone seems to be able to manage themselves and have no need to be told what to do or be judged in a 9-box grid anymore? And what should we do about all these problems? Well, people ask me all the time, and I have some ideas. And one of the ideas has to do with how HR needs to change. So we're going to take a small overview of the HR change in the future of work. The Agile Model of HR states that human resources job is not just to implement controls or standards and drive execution, being the police in the organization, checking compliance to processes, but rather to facilitate and improve organizational agility. And this totally changes HR's mission and focus. Driving agility means driving programs which create adaptability, innovation, collaboration, and speed. So I really think that HR should be leading the change, and here is why. It's time for HR to step up and show what you can do for the organization. It's all about the people and the system in which the people work. If we can give the right conditions to people, they will take care of the rest. So we don't need to do more things. We need to learn how to stop hindering people from giving their best effort to the company by providing the wrong structures. And HR has the power to decide on these structures that can support people to perform or make it more difficult to contribute in creative and innovative manners. HR is controlling change management, leadership development, talent acquisition, compensation and benefits, performance management, all these deep structures that permeate the whole organization. So if HR keeps holding on to the old ways of doing things, we don't have the possibility to change in any part of the company. And that's why HR needs to go first and let go. And here you have the opportunity to really make a difference. Instead of using job descriptions to close people into boxes marked with labels, we need to focus on letting people be their best selves at work and start from the person when we create their job. There are few people who fit into a predefined job description perfectly. And often they have also other skills that the organization could benefit from that we are missing out on if we are not open to tailor the roles to some degree around the person. Take into account what the person wants and need. In Agile, we talk about T-shaped competence. You need to have both breadth and depth, and you can also call these people generalized specialists or specialized generalists. This creates a lot of flexibility and adaptability. For the individual, there is a possibility to either broaden or deepen competence depending on what they are interested in. For the team, it creates an increased flexibility when everyone can take on each other's tasks because you have learned from each other. And you try out many different things. For the organization, it makes competency shifts possible and minimizes the risk for bottlenecks in competence. And you also get a better adaptability to changing organizational competence requirements. We don't have to fire people because we don't need their job role anymore, because they can always do something else if they are T-shaped. This is a great tool to use for any HR or people and culture department when understanding how to optimize employee experience. It's called the employee experience journey mapping. It's very similar to the customer journey mapping template. But here we look at the life cycle of an employee instead of the buying cycle of a customer. So the journey steps here are attract, recruit, onboard, engage, develop, perform, reward, and exit. And then we look at different perspectives on each of these areas. So what are the goals of the person? What are the needs? And then the touch points in each of these steps. What is the organization doing and what are barriers and enablers for people to work and be happy and satisfied and perform? The difference then between an HR professional and the Agile people coach, which is a new role that I recommend that HR can take or grow into rather, is instead of only having extensive HR process competence, maybe they also need to understand complex systems. So this is a kind of a little bit unlearning, a little bit relearning, a little bit skill development for HR. Deep skills in some HR specialist area is very common for HR people. Instead, we need maybe even deeper general people skills, psychology, sociology, relationship handling, and similar competencies. Instead of having no formal power to lead transformation, they need more trust and influence to transform. And instead of being stuck in certain roles, they need the flexibility to wear different hats depending on the need of the people in any company. Instead of one size fits all training and solutions, you need to work with solutions tailored towards unique local needs. And instead of developing and delivering solutions to the business, you need to develop solutions together with the business, involving them in the delivery. Instead of mainly supporting the managers, HR should be supporting all the people in the organization. And instead of a slightly parental view sometimes, we need to treat employees as the adults as they are, who can make decisions and be empowered and have a budget and buy what they need. Instead of focus on individual performance, we need to enable systems performance. And instead of expecting answers, they need listening and observing skills. And instead of checking compliance to HR processes, they need to enable improvement. And instead of being back office workers, they need to go out there, walk the floor, go to Gemba, we say in Lean, as you know. Now moving to psychological safety. So this is a foundation for learning agile organization, because if we don't have psychological safety, we don't learn, we don't make mistakes, and we don't experiment enough. And experimentation is what we need to start doing, both in HR and in all other functions in any organization. So we can ask ourselves, do we really feel psychologically safe? Have you ever held back from sharing anything at work? And that could be something you worked on, it could be an idea you had, it could be a complaint or something else. Did you hold back from sharing that because you were worried about how people might react to it? And most people answer this question, yes. But if you answer no to this question, you're either incredibly confident or you are lying, I would say, because we have all been there. So a prerequisite for agile learning and diversity as well is psychological safety. And I've been thinking a lot about what is the most important thing that could boost productivity and engagement, as well as performance, innovation, and a great culture. And after having worked with a lot of large organizations as a consultant, as well as looking at research on how successful company cultures are shaped, I believe that I know absolutely now, and I know what the most important one thing is. And that is not intrinsic motivation, neither is it engaged employees, a fantastic workplace, or servant managers. It's actually psychological safety. That's the winner by far. So why am I saying that? So I want to talk a little bit about that and explain. Sometimes we don't speak up because everyone is sitting quietly, even if there is a question in there that needs an answer. Most of the time, we are too busy managing impressions instead of saying what we really think or asking the questions that we need the answers to. But you think, I'll figure it out later. You know, he looks like he knows what he's talking about, this teacher. But there are many situations where if people felt psychologically safe and asked the right questions, mistakes could be avoided. So it's all about asking the unspoken questions, really. Sometimes, and this is another example, we don't tell others about our ideas because we think that they may be perceived in a negative way, when in fact somebody is really looking for a new solution to solve the problem. And we're sometimes afraid to look incompetent in spite of our superior knowledge about a specific situation. And in this case, the nurse here has a piece of information that the doctor is missing. And the patient is not feeling good with the current dose of medicine. The fact is that nobody wants to go to work and look stupid or incompetent, because we all want to look smart and helpful. So we don't speak up if there is a chance that we will be backstabbed or a chance that what we say will be misinterpreted. And this is really easy to manage. You don't ask questions, you don't admit weakness or mistakes, you don't offer new ideas, and you don't critique the way things are, the status quo. To break that barrier, we must all be brave and go first, and then we open up for others to do the same thing. You need to ask that question that you need the answer to. And you need to tell people about your ideas, because psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with your ideas, questions, concerns, or admitting a mistake. Inform people about your observations, because in some cases it could save lives. So when the workplace feels challenging but not threatening, teams can sustain this broaden and build mode, and oxytocin levels in our brains rise, which is eliciting trust and trust-making behaviors. This is a huge factor in team success, and there is a lot of research around that. And one such psychology professor is Susan Wieland, who was studying groups processes and concluded that in an immature team, the questions that you ask yourself will become an obstacle to perform. So you focus on your appearance and whether you're accepted or not, instead of focusing on productive work. Social group processes take over too much of people's attention, so that you focus less on the productive work. Let's continue here with the Agile Manifesto, or rather the new version of the Agile Manifesto, first communicated by Joshua Krevsky's keynote presentation in Agile Alliance conference in 2016. It consists of 4 great cornerstones to keep in mind for everything we do in life, really. It's make people awesome, deliver value continuously, experiment and learn rapidly, and then make safety a prerequisite. These are the 4 cornerstones. So here it's also mentioned. Also, we have Google's Project Aristotle. They made this massive 2-year study on what makes teams successful. And of these 5 key dynamics that you see on the slide, of effective teams that the researchers identified, psychological safety was by far the most important. So the Google researchers found that individuals on teams with higher psychological safety are less likely to leave Google. They're more likely to harness the power of diverse ideas from their teammates. They bring in more revenue, and they are rated as effective twice as often by executives. Yep. So there are many situations here that if we felt safe, mistakes could be avoided. When you spend some time talking about private things, instead of thinking that you can optimize by only talking about your job or your work tasks, team members get closer to one another and tend to produce better stuff together. And then the output, of course, increases from the team, the outcome increases. And the next example I want to bring up is Professor Amy C. Edmondson from Harvard Business School, because she did this research into psychological safety, and she was actually the one who coined the term first of all. And her research shows very interesting stuff about people's learning abilities. Her research shows that the higher the degree of psychological safety and motivation and accountability, the higher the degree of learning is in the workplace. Direct connection there. So how do you build psychological safety then if you're a manager? How do you create an environment where people feel free to speak up and admit error and mistakes so that everyone can learn from them? Well, you show vulnerability. You admit mistakes. And then you show that you're not perfect, which opens up for everybody else to also show that they are not perfect, because nobody is. So as a manager, you must acknowledge your own fallibility. You're not perfect. We can't know what will happen, and we need everybody's brains to try to figure out the best way forward. So asking these questions will maximize your learning by making it okay for people to ask questions and make mistakes. In a psychologically safe workplace, good performance is acknowledged and strengthened. And we can try and we can fail, and it's okay, because in the end we will learn. So what we are out to create is not these psychologically dangerous cycles where we are afraid to admit mistakes, we blame others for them, we're less likely to share different views, and we can become victims of the common knowledge effect, where a lot of people know something that might not be the right thing, like, Copernicus. A long time ago, he went to the scientists in his time and he said that, hey, it's not that the sun is orbiting around the earth, it's rather the other way around, it's the earth orbiting around the sun. And they actually threw him in jail, and later they even killed him for having a different view. So the common knowledge effect is really damaging in my mind. Instead, we want the cycles of psychological safety here. So if we can admit mistakes, learn from failure, share ideas, we will also innovate better and make better decisions. And you can think about what happens if we don't let people fail. this change that we need to make in organizations. We cannot do it alone. To be able to remove limiting structures and change the culture and create psychological safety and start collaborating towards a more agile future, we need to join forces, all of us. HR cannot do it alone. Leaders cannot do it alone. We need everybody to start talking across boundaries of different kinds, starting the conversation, nudging the system and the people, and moving this common direction together. This one we talked about. So when we work with Agile, we don't follow recipes. There are no recipes or best solutions that always work. I usually call Agile an anti-recipe because it's the absence of a certain recipe. Best practice, that's a recipe, right? It's always past practice, and only the mediocre companies do best practice. You will never be better than your competitors if you follow best practice. So we work with principles as the basis, and then we can use different tools to make the principles come alive. But of course, there is no guarantee that the tools will work for you if you don't have the right culture, the right soil in the system. So way to change the culture: start by change and remove limiting structures, mainly coming from finance. The yearly budgets, the annual budgets linked to fixed performance targets, linked to bonuses and rewards. And then we increase instead supporting structures to make it easy to behave according to the Agile mindset. It could be OKRs or Scrum or Kanban boards or other things. And then we start showing the new behaviors that come from learning new ways of acting and working and using the new tools and practices. And then we repeat from one, because these structures have a tendency to creep back on us. The fact is that it starts with you and your team. If you don't kick off the discussion about what you can change right now, nothing will ever happen. And in theory, when a critical number of all employees are convinced that there needs to be a change, it will happen all by itself, not before. You need to start a dialogue yourselves in your teams about what you can do to build a different organization. You may have some values and principles that you would like to increase, but if you change nothing, nothing will change. Ask yourself and your peers, what can we do to increase our learning? What can we do to improve the way we work together? How could I do something different that will make a difference for somebody else? And what are my ideas that I have been keeping to myself? And how can we make this an even better place to work in? So it all starts with doing things that you didn't do yesterday. We talk about unlearning, we talk about relearning, doing lots of experiments, failing fast. This is how you increase learning and increase innovation and creativity that can help you to discover and produce the new products and services that your customers want and need. By being the change you want to see in others, you will become a leader. And self-leadership is one of the things that we need more than ever today. And by the way, have you heard it before? You cannot change anybody else. You can only change yourself. So if you want to lead change, it starts with you. Tiny habits. This is a simple tool that can help you to behave in more productive ways. And in the long perspective, it will make a huge difference for the organization as a whole if everybody is doing it. So it starts with thinking about the trigger that you might have, and then you link something, a little tiny, very small habit to that trigger. And every time you do this first thing, you will also do the second thing. And that can change your life forever if you start doing tiny habits. So this is the Agile People Manifesto that you find online. And yeah, I'll let you have a look at that yourselves. Maybe after this session, you can look it up. We created it together here in Sweden on the West Coast for, it was 2019. And with this, I'm going to give you a last shout out. Start today, follow the Agile People principles and start your personal and organizational learning journey towards greater people and business agility. The sooner you start, the sooner you will reap the benefits. And three books have been published from Agile People. This is the first book, 2017. This is the second book. It's a picture book with 220 illustrations. It's perfect for your management teams because they don't have any, they don't read books because they don't have time. So they watch pictures, and it's very good for them. And the last book came out in September 2020. And this is co-creation between me and 35 Agile people from around the world. So we have each written one chapter about one of the Agile People principles. We invite you to join the Agile People community. Welcome. Visit agilepeople.com for more information. My next course starts on October 27, and it's about business agility foundations. It's about Agile HR. It's about leading with agility and Agile People coaching. So you are very welcome to take part in that as well. I'm going to stop sharing there. And now I would first like to hear if you have any questions, and answer some questions if you have. And then I would like to send you to the breakout rooms for a small exercise. Let's see. I'm going to, is anybody going to help me with the questions?
I have a question.
Oh, go on. You go first.
Okay, hi. Thanks for that. Really, really interesting. I've worked for a couple of massive American corporations that have annual performance reviews and all those kind of things. And whenever you talk to HR people about that evolution that's required, they all freak out. You know, there's like, what do you do instead of this? Is the question, and they don't know the answer. So where can they get the answer from?
Me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, in my HR course, I go through exactly why do we do performance reviews? There are 4 reasons really. And then we look at, okay, does it lead to the desired results? No, it doesn't. What can we do instead? So we chop up the different purposes of the performance management process, and we look at each of them separately. And then we have different answers depending on what the purpose is. So learning and development, yeah, you work with experimentation, trial and error, this and that. Instead of goal setting, increasing performance through goal setting, we work with objectives and key results. And we don't link it to rewards and bonuses. When it comes to feedback and coaching, we do it regularly instead of doing it once a year. If we talk about compensation decisions, it's a separate story. We have different ways of setting salaries. We don't need to do a 9-box grid and link it to a salary box. That's just old traditional behavior that doesn't increase performance at all. So there are other ways to set salaries. And there are many, many companies without management at all who are setting salaries every day. So why couldn't they do that? I mean, it's just a different way of doing it. But it all starts with finance, right? It all starts with the budgets. Where if you have a department budget, it's supposed to reach some fixed targets probably, or you are at least supposed to don't spend more than your budget says, right? And that's the problem, because then you will guard that with your life, let's say, if you're a manager for that department. And here the problem starts, because then you don't share, you don't help others, you don't look at the value stream, you look at top-down hierarchies, and I report a result and then I get my reward. And this is the problem, the biggest problem.
And have you seen large corporations like that make the change, actually do the different ways of working?
Yes, I have.
I
So
really
there
need
are
to see
many
that.
companies who are doing that. Yeah, almost all big organizations are on a change journey today. It just takes time, but they're on their way now. And especially now after the pandemic, they understand that we cannot work with the old annual budgeting anymore. Imagine the people who did the budgeting process in 2019 in the autumn there, and then what happened in March. They all saw this go to hell. So now they are more convinced than ever that yes, something has to change.
Good, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Hi, Pia-Maria. I had a question that's kind of surrounds one of the slides that you put up, maybe about a third of the way into your presentation, around the idea of an agile people coach, which is something I've kind of never kind of considered. I mean, like in my mind, that kind of triggered the idea of, you know, wherever I've worked, HR has always been kind of a silo, a department off to the side. And I've never thought about HR-led transformations or anything like that. Is the agile people coach role, am I right in thinking that basically, essentially, you're putting HR into the teams, just like we would put many other kind of skills into the teams?
You could do it that way, or you could have a center of excellence, or that comes out and help people and involve people in the delivery of the HR deliverables. Many times HR consists of HR business partners who are out there working together in the local units. And then you have HR specialists centrally, and then you have HR administration and payroll and you know, support and stuff like that. But they could work with value streams instead. So a perfect value stream would be, for example, potential candidate to onboarded employee. That's the end of that value stream. So you can change entirely the way HR works together, definitely. And the Agile People Coach role is very close to an Agile coach and an HR business partner. So it's kind of a mix of both. They have so much in common, but they don't know it. They don't even understand it, and they don't talk to each other. Agile coaches and HR business partners.
It reminded me a little bit of what we've been reading Team Topologies as part of our book club at work, and the idea is slightly different, I get it, but like basically in there I think it talks about the idea of architects, technical architects also being having a lot of people skills as well, and taking on more of that role in team structures in order to kind of work against this idea of Conway's law, basically. So it just kind of chimed with that. Yeah, thank you. No, that's really interesting.
Yeah, great.
I've got one, Pia-Maria, if that's all right. Really interesting talk, thank you, really enjoyed it. And one, curiously, because we're mainly sort of agilists here from sort of business side rather than HR side, when you get HR individuals onto some of your courses, what kind of reaction do you get out of interest? Do they see the light quite quickly? Do they take quite a long time to come around to a different way of thinking?
No, they don't. They are very open. I think that I get the ones who are very interested and who already knows a little bit of Agile. So it's very easy. It used to be more difficult, but I can see a change because I've been running the Agile HR course since 2012, right? So I have seen a change. In the beginning, I had a lot of people questioning what I was saying, right? And especially in countries like Greece and more kind of authoritarian, do you say so? Authoritarian cultures who are more kind of, driven by authorities. But now I never get any, I don't know if it's because I'm supposedly I'm a thought leader or something that they don't dare, but they all agree, because the culture in my course is such that I have almost 50% Agile coaches and 50% HR, and then some leaders as well. And that's an interesting mix, because the Agile coaches is talking about Agile like it's normal, and and they talked in the breakout rooms. We do a lot of exercises and interactive discussions in the groups. And they come out as a change people. They say, this is what I wanted to do when I first started to work in HR. This is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with the people. I wanted to involve them. I wanted to serve them. But I ended up being the company police, and they don't want to be the company police. They don't want to measure compliance to a performance management process. They've just been assigned that by management, and management doesn't know better.
It's interesting. Thank you.
So yeah, no, it's not that hard. Do you want to play the psychological safety game, or do you want to bring the link with you just and play it with your teams? I'll put you in rooms and I'll see if anybody joins, because I know I cannot ask these questions to everybody. 4 or 5 participants, 3, 4 maybe. Just introduce yourselves briefly, and the link is in the chat for you. And there are instructions inside there. You can just click on the instructions. You go back and you click on the different cards, and you will see a little green or a little red guy coming up, and you take turns and discuss the topics that are on the cards. There you go. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, how was that?
Awesome, as always.
Was it good? Yeah.
So it was.
Great. So this is a game that you can play with your teams in the retrospective, for example. You can pick some certain cards and say, okay, let's focus on these 3 cards for the next sprint, because this is something that somebody said needs to be increased or decreased. And then we can kind of monitor that and talk about it and evaluate in the end of the sprints and in the retrospective. It's a good kind of habit to do, because you open up for things, dialogues about things that you usually don't talk about in a team, and that are difficult topics to talk about. And this makes it okay to talk about it, which is good. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me. And you can use this link, it's an open link. So if you want to play it with your team, please go ahead and do that. And you can also order the psychological safety game from our shop, the agilepeople.com/shop website. Physical cards, if you prefer to spread them on the table. So I'll give the word to you, Eddie.
Okay, so thank you so much. If anyone's unmuting, round of applause, or virtual round of applause. Thank you very much, Pia-Maria, for such a fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic talk. Great learnings, great observations, and things for us to ponder on. Yeah, we'll send around links to all the things that were mentioned during the talk, and various trainings, book links, all that kind of stuff for Pia. Definitely encourage you to investigate those. Just a last order of business. We've got a couple of other meetups coming up. We've got one scheduled for November and December. So check out our meetup page for details of what's coming. Yeah, and thank you all very much for joining us. I'm sure it's at the end of a long day for the majority, so we won't keep you any longer, but yes, thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon.